Hey fam, it's your boy Pop Pop. So I hadn't really intended to make a video today, and today is Sunday, what many in our country consider the Lord's Day, but actually Sunday is the first day of the week, not Monday, and Saturday is the Sabbath day. And Sunday worship is something that's more of the Catholic Church and its influence on religion than anything else. So that being said, another thing I wanted to say was that going live has proven for me to be a double-edged sword. I like talking to my peeps. I love you all. I care about you. And my channel originally started out as a video diary of my dreary B-movie life. And it's kind of morphed into a journey for me that we've made together. Let me change this just a little tad. So I'm hot. It's about 80 degrees in my room, and that's a matter of discipline for me, because when it's cold out, I keep my room at 59 degrees. That's so that if the heating fails, there's no shock of you being in a room that's 85 degrees in the winter, and then if the heat goes out, you get sick. And in the summertime, I condition myself to get by in an 80 degree room with a fan. And I don't like being air conditioned and frozen like an ice cube. And my mother was that way. My mother was a fan person, and my father was an air conditioning person. So my mother was a fan of the fan. And that's the way I am. When I lived in South Baltimore, I just had a window fan. And if it got too blazingly hot, I would put my feet in a tub of cool water. And that did the trick for me. I would sit outside with my feet in cool water, listening to all the air conditioning units buzz all over the city. So, again, I want to have a discussion. I want to keep it on topic. I want our words to be circumspect, respectful, and to remain on point. Hey, Katrina. And my question is, one of the channels that I go to every day for news and information and to be uplifted is the Watchman River channel. I like to go to Watchman River, and I used to go to Jimmy Evans' channel, except he threw a Calvinist wrench into his belief system as far as whether children were saved or not. It was a really weird curveball that he threw in saying that children of unbelievers would not be raptured when Jesus comes. I disagree with that. I believe as long as a child is innocent, has that childhood innocence, that Jesus will pluck them up just like every other child. But Jimmy Evans stated that he didn't believe that. He believed that the children of unsaved people would be left behind to go through the god awful 7 year tribulation period. You know, why would you do that to a child? Why would a child have to pay for gross, horrendous sins that people are committing now when they're a child? And see, that's why the world is trying to steal the innocence of children by having these men dress up and teach a child to pole dance, and to take dollar bills and stick them in various crevices and all. Like the deal with the Dalai Lama, a little 7-year-old looking boy, around seven-ish, went up to the Dalai Lama and hugged him and gave him an innocent kiss. And the Dalai Lama, who all of these celebrities think is wonderful, like sliced bread was in my day, they think the Dalai Lama is so hip and wonderful. And then it turns out that they're all foul. The Dalai Lama turns to this 7-year-old boy and he sticks his tongue out in the boy's face and tells the little boy to suck his tongue. Unfortunately, he did. It was the most revolting thing I've ever seen on the internet, one of the most revolting things, and it's gone viral, And of course now, they don't say pedophile anymore. They say young attracted or something like that. So my question being, for all of these people like Nancy Pelosi, who every time she would get in front of a microphone would have to tell you what a good Catholic she is, oh, she's a great Catholic, and don't you dare. She'd get out her hands. She always gets out her puppet hands. Don't you dare say anything about her Catholic faith, because her faith is deep. Yet she went around with an abortion pin, and ironically, the abortion pin had the word abortion, and it had a heart. It had a heart on it, because she and that other woman were saying that the fetal heartbeat is imagination, that anti-choice, they skew everything anti-choice people have. And see, when the whole abortion started, and the public TV people made a huge error in running this show. It was called All About Jane. And so this lady has a midwife come over. I gotta get my circulation going. When you only have the upper part of your body, the lower part loses its circulation. So I gotta rub my leg. I'm not doing anything untoward. I gotta rub my leg, otherwise it's very painful. Usually I never do that on camera, but all I'm doing is I'm rubbing the circulation back into my leg. Wheelchair Dan goes through the same thing. He has times where he actually cries on camera, because when you only have the top part of you, it's very painful. The body does generate pain signals to tell you it needs attention, even though you really can't do anything down there. And I'm blessed, because the guy who came up and punched me in the spine that night, if he had punched me higher in the spine, I would not have control over my lungs, and I would have had a trach, like Superman did. No, I don't need it. I don't need it, and it's been bad. It's been bad happenings before. I don't know how you say it. I want to stay on topic, though. I want to stay on topic. Uh, but in any case, you have a woman who's telling you what a great Catholic she is, and yet she helped get a law passed that allows a baby to be aborted right up to the day of birth. Now, if you have a baby who's a 9-month-old baby and weighs 7 or 8 pounds, and it's born and it's healthy, and they don't like the eye color or hair color or certain features, and instead of having that baby adopted, they're going to stick a pair of scissors in the back of that baby's head and it's called pithing the brain, scrambling it. We used to do that in high school. We were forced to do it to frogs before you did dissection on a frog. That way you could do vivisection and the animal wasn't suffering, as if, you know. And I actually got kicked out of a science class in high school one day for refusing to do what Mr. I wanted to be a doctor, but I'm not going to do this particular revolting thing. So I got kicked out and failed for the day. But in any case, you have El Presidente, who was refused the Eucharist, by the Catholic Church. So he hops on a private plane, on a great big taxpayer plane, flies over to see the Pope, and the Pope goes, "Oh yeah, Scranton Joe, he's a hell of a guy. Sure, he can have the Eucharist, no problem. Anybody else can't, but he can." So these are people that are they're looking to please men. They're not looking to please God, and they're looking to get along with the world system and do all of their foul deals, to make sure that they get the American dream and they get a piece of the pie while denying other people, But in any case, getting back on topic, the thing is, the channels that I watch are Watchman River for inspiration. Tom is a wonderful guy. At least I think he's wonderful. That's the person that I see. I watch Redacted because Redacted is very well produced. I watch Canadian Prepper because he has tactical information about survival, how to survive this world that's becoming more and more dangerous. Behold Israel. Amir Sarfati was an intelligence officer in the Israeli army, and he's still well connected. So I watch that channel, and then I watch Wihan Gravitas, which is an Indian news channel, because they have no reason to lie like our news does to us. They have no reason to sugarcoat everything. So those are my sources of information. And then I watch Grand Supreme News Channel, Louis' channel, and he has good information, and it's up to date, and there's a lot of information, and he's got a speech impediment. So if you ever go to GS News or Grand Supreme News, he's got 2 channels. Please be polite and don't make fun of his speech impediment, because otherwise he does an excellent job. Okay, so that being said, I was watching Watchman River, and For those of you that are just coming online, I'm not trolling his channel. I'm not criticizing his channel. I think Tom, as he's presented to us, seems like he's a wonderful person. But his version of Christianity seems to be a light beer kind of Christianity. He uses a metaphor all the time. He says, well, if you're a child and your father takes you to the mall in the station wagon with the other kids, and and you act up, and the other kids are well behaved, the father wouldn't leave you behind. This is in reference to the rapture. He's saying that the father wouldn't leave you behind and tell all the other kids to get in the car and leave you. Well, I got to tell you, Tom, my father would. My father would in a heartbeat. If I messed up, made a mess in his car or misbehaved or something, my father would put me out in a heartbeat. So that's been my whole problem experientially as a kid, was because I came from such deep abuse. I came from such deep abuse that I couldn't get a good understanding of my heavenly father, because my earthly father had done things that I can't even mention on this channel because of a few things. For one thing, he's dead. And when a person is dead, especially a person who got born again, he's been forgiven of all of his sins. I was with him when he passed, patting his hand, telling him I loved him and everything was okay. And that was very difficult to tell a person who had electrocuted me 3 times, as a joke, put a cigarette out on me one time because he was irritated with me. He didn't just put the cigarette out on me. He dragged on the cigarette and got a nice orange glow. And then he took his finger and lifted up my shirt and crushed the cigarette out on my belly. I still have the mark. I still have the mark with the ashes embedded in the skin like a tattoo. I've had that ever since a child. When I was a toddler, back in 1959, my father rented this gorgeous Chevrolet Super Sport Impala convertible, and it was robin egg blue with a red interior, weirdest color combination, a convertible with these 2 antennae going out the back, and it was like birth control, in the sense that my parents were rolling down the highway with this convertible, and my brother and I are crawling out on the trunk from inside the car. We're like halfway lying down on the trunk lid as we're going down the highway, and my parents are like not a care in the world. My father always used to say, well, I'll raise the ones that live. I heard him say that so many times. At dinner time, he would say, bless us, O Lord, for these thy gifts and all of these snot-nosed, worthless children. I heard that curse, spoken over me. So 1959, we go to this beach in the convertible, and karma caught up with my family because it was a white-only beach. And I remember it had a big sign with dark blue lettering, white only. And back then it was like $6 or $9 to get in for the day for a family. And that was an exorbitant amount of money, because when I went to work, my first full-time job, I made $9 a day, not $9 an hour. I made $9 a day working in an Esso gas station. And there were men that were raising children, families on that kind of money. Premium gas was 26 cents a gallon back then. And you ran out and a car would come up and you ran out and you washed the windshield and put air in the tires and went under the hood and checked the oil in the motor, all of that stuff. And I remember one day my shirt pulled out from the back of my pants, and my boss had warned me to keep the shirt tucked in. So he was a ex-Army, Plaster Costello. He was like a general in the Army. And he came out and he held the bottom of the shirt and he took a pair of scissors and he cut the shirt tail off, and then went back in the office. And I was 14 years old working with, my parents were eggheads. My mother was an Egyptologist. My father was a very famous writer. And I was not raised around the crudeness that I found when I went to work at the gas station, of men farting and picking their nose and hocking up lungers and spitting all over the place and scratching their groin and their butt and belching and cussing and all of that other stuff. I hadn't been exposed to that. My father would let you smoke cigarettes and drink coffee, but he would literally almost beat you to death for cursing or drinking. I found that out when I was 11, and he punched me in the face, knocked me down the basement stairs, came down, stood over top of me, and beat me like we were in a bar fight. 11-year-old child. So I was a toddler. We go to this white-only beach, and man, it is pristine and clean, and it's gated, it's beautiful, but they had no umbrellas, and the water was only a couple feet tall. So you could go way out into the water, I would say maybe 50 or 100 yards, and you were still in knee-high water only. So my parents were very assured that my brother and I would be safe, and they're sitting in the chairs sunning themselves. My brother and I absolutely getting burnt to a crisp, being fair-skinned white children. And so, like I said, karma took its toll, and we came back to the house. By the time we got home, my brother and I had bubbles on our skin where we had literally cooked in the sun, and our skin had crispy bubbles on it. And my mother stripped us down and put Noxzema cold cream on us and wrapped us in white linen sheets to absorb the goo and the blood and the ick and everything from us being burned. So the next day, my brother was very passive and quiet. My mother, when we were children, had a goiter removed, and back then what they did, they just slit the throat from side to side, and they took the goiter out. So my mother, when we were little children, would come up and she would whisper. She would come up and whisper to us, get real close. And so my brother and I got the understanding that you weren't supposed to talk real loud. And both of us, well, I know for me, I ended up in school and they would have me put on a pair of headphones and talk into a mirror, giving me speech therapy because I didn't talk. So this afternoon, my brother's sitting on the couch on the back porch, and he's eating a grilled cheese sandwich like a little squirrel, being quiet. My father comes out and he dumps a bottle of Old Spice cologne into his hand. And boy, before you could say anything, he slaps my brother on the chest and the belly. And of course, the alcohol and the cologne lit my brother up like on fire. And he threw the sandwich in the air, a very disgusting scene. And he threw the sandwich up in the air and ran out of the room. Wah! Awful scream. So then he turned to me and he said, "Come here, boy." I was like, "No." "Come here, boy." "No." "I'm your father." "Yes." "Come here, boy." "No." And I ran out past him, and I would not have anything to do with him after that day. We were estranged at that point. I wanted nothing to do. And to this day, if somebody has Old Spice cologne on, it makes me want to throw up. Help it. If I smell original Old Spice, and please don't go to my Amazon link and waste your money getting me a bottle of Old Spice as a gag, because I won't open it. I'll just throw it in the trash. So please don't do that. There are plenty of other things that I can use, and my birthday's coming up on Mother's Day. If you want to get me something, there's plenty of stuff on my Amazon link that I need, but don't waste your money getting me a bottle of Old Spice because I never use it. But in any case, I looked up this beach, and the beach back in 1959 was white only. And my father laughed to my mother as we were going through the gate, because we were a Catholic family, and back then Catholic was persona non grata until President Kennedy was elected. And they were worried that the Vatican would use President Kennedy to influence American politics. Everyone was very surprised that, hey, Helen, I'm going to put you in timeout. Pop up another comment like that, and I'm going to put you in timeout because I'm not a mooch. The Word of God says that a soldier is worthy of his hire. I have people that I've loved on, and I have people that I have sent money to help from this channel that have said they needed my help, and I've sent them money and help. I sent a 4,400 watt generator down to Jimmy Swaggart's area in Louisiana when they had the hurricane. I paid on that generator for 6 months. I sent the generator. I sent a carbon monoxide detector. I sent a fire extinguisher. I sent the cable to go into the house from the generator. I sent a bicycle lock so that the generator could be locked so nobody would steal it. I sent the family a can of cookies and a note of encouragement. So don't you dare call me a mooch, lady. And you can just take your ass off my channel. So take your nasty attitude someplace else. So in any case, my father was laughing because we were a Catholic family, and he said that it was funny that we got into this white-only beach. And I'm just saying that's the way it was back then. And I'm trying not to let this lady bother me. That's the whole thing about going live. You have wonderful people, and then you have one person who's got to act like an a-hole. So Helen Smith, when I get done, I'm going to go to your channel. I guarantee when I go to your channel it's going to say that you've been a member. You've been a member. Okay, so Helen Smith and her nasty behind is in timeout. So that's what happens, fam, when somebody trolls me real nasty like that. I'm going to reach over and press the remove button. So Helen, you're in timeout. Every time you go to make a comment, I'm going to press timeout. And then if you get on my nerves too bad, I'm going to press report. So leave me alone. So in any case, I looked up this beach, and of course the beach is still there. And instead of being white only, it's members only. So I went from, being estranged to my father, and a whole bunch of awful things happened. 11 years old. My body temperature has actually dropped because the lady pushed my button, so I gotta pull my blanket up, warm up a little bit. I'm sorry I let this lady get to me. Nasty people, some of them, just nasty. Most people are wonderful, but you get the nasty ones. And you always find a person like that, and something will happen in their life, and they're like, well, I don't know why God let this happen to me. It's because you were nasty and you sowed nasty seeds, and karma came back and bit you in the ass, lady. So I'm not pressed about you at all. The devil using you to just try and stir me up, and it's not going to happen. So in any case, I looked this beach up, and it's not white only, but it's members only, which I find very ironic. So 11 years old, my sister cornered me in the kitchen, held a knife to my belly, threatened to gut me like a fish. And my father knocked me down the basement stairs and almost beat me to death. 13, I went to a listening camp, and they made you hold your ankles and duck walk in the sun. And then they gave you empty buckets. And if you spoke out of turn, they put a little bit of water in the bucket. And so after holding 30 pounds of water on each side in a bucket for 20 minutes, your arms were like spaghetti noodles. And then 14, I went to work full time. I worked half. I went to school till noon. Then I walked to an Esso station, worked till 10:30 at night for $9 a day, worked a full day. By the time I was 15, I was out the door working on a garbage truck. 17, I taught my sister how to drive, and she started taking me out to, my sister was like 42 at the time. I taught her how to drive, and she started taking me out to porno shows and porno theaters and hotels and bars, and that got out of hand. And so it wasn't totally incestuous, but she did stuff like, we'd go out for a late dinner, and she would slip her shoe off and take her foot and rub my crotch underneath the table, rub in between my legs and stuff. So when you sin, the devil makes you think that sin is just the coolest. When you sin, the devil makes you think it's the coolest thing on earth, until you get saved and you come into a knowledge of the purity of God and what you've done. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe we did that. When I was 11, I cut grass for a guy who was a pedophile. And in any case, he said I would make more money if I came inside and worked. And it was hot as heck that summer. And he had no screens on his windows. And he had let his dog poop all over the floor. When I came in the house, he would spray my legs with DEET to keep the fleas off. And then I would clean the house up while he read his newspaper sitting in his underpants and an open dress shirt with the TV tray. And he was like, well, if you want a beer, get me a beer and get yourself one. I was like, wow. Stomping with the big dogs. The guy paid me, $50, $60 a day. 11-year-old kid. That's like being rich. And so I took his laundry upstairs. He had a bar on top of the dresser. And he made me a Gibson, which is a martini with the onion instead of an olive. I woke up in bed. He would go to Taiwan and Bangkok, on government money to get with little boys. And my mother was no fool. My mother did my laundry, and she put two and two together. She said, I don't want you going to this guy's house anymore. So, and again, this is adult conversation. I'm being round about things because I don't want to be crude. My channel is all about family and helping people. But I let that lady get me upset. My question being, with that background, and like I said, I had a skewed image of what a father is, so it affected. And my question for Watchman River, finally getting to the point after a half hour, is Tom says that if a person who believes that they're a Christian doesn't believe in the rapture, then are they saved or not? And that's my question, because the thing about it is there are people that believe that they're saved and they're pro-abortion. Well, are you saved if you believe in abortion? That's just a question. That's a question. If God is a God of creation and you're for the destruction of something, are you saved? If God says in his promise that he's going to come back and get us, and you don't believe that promise, then are you really a Christian? Are you a Christian if you say you're born again, but you don't believe in the virgin birth of Jesus Christ, or that you don't believe that he actually died'd on the cross? That's just a question I'm putting to people out there. I don't know. That's what I'm asking. It says in the word, to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Bible verse, work out your salvation. So, Philippians 2:12, therefore, my beloved, just as always you have obeyed, not only in my present, but I'm assuming it's cut off. I'm assuming it's going to say, how much more in his absence do you obey? And then it has an expansion. It says, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you both to will and to work for his good pleasure. So again, once you're in Christ, you know, it's not Christ plus works, but when you have the Holy Spirit and you're born again, you will want to please God and do those things. I don't believe personally that you can be pro-abortion and please God. I personally don't believe that, and the reason being is when getting back to that movie All About Jane, and it was a real shocker back then when it came out in the 70s, because this woman got pregnant and she calls a midwife to abort her baby. And it says when they started to scoop the poor little thing out of the lady like seeds out of a pumpkin, that they got an arm off of the baby and they held it up and danced and laughed and giggled and everything. They thought that was wonderful. And I canceled my public TV membership that night. I was horrified. And the reason being was we were told that abortion would never be used for birth control, never be used for that. Only in the case of less than 1% of RAPE or incest. That's what we were told. We were never told that it would turn out to be 70 million, little babies would be scraped out of their mother's belly like seeds out of a pumpkin. And I'm going to tell you, fam, I like to watch the dog rescue channels. And there was a lady who had an abortion shirt on, and she was crawling on the dirt and through pricker bushes and all kind of stuff to save this dog. But here she's got a shirt on intimating that a human baby is inconvenient, so you just get rid of it and don't worry about it. Just get rid of it. And of course, they don't tell you about the increased risks that women go through with breast cancer, because when a woman is pregnant, the cells in the breast start to change so that the lady can make milk for her baby. And when you stop the process, those cells mutate because they're starting to go through a change and they're not finishing. So, and let me be quite specific. My thing is that I understand that a man will go to a woman and he will tell the woman, I'm your man, I'm going to love you and take care of you, and we don't need protection to make love, and I'm going to marry you someday. And they always call themselves the fiance, the baby daddy. And then the woman gets pregnant and the man will say, well, you got to handle your business. And the lady's mother, a lot of times will say, girl, I raised my family. Don't come back here with a baby. I'm not raising your baby. Go handle your business. And so she goes to handle her business, and she goes to the clinic, and she's greeted by church people yelling at her and screaming at her and telling her, on top of everything else now, that she's going to go to hell. On top of everything, instead of yelling to the girl and saying, Miss, can I help you out with some food or rent money or a place to stay or a job or daycare or something? No, they're yelling to the girl, showing her pictures of chopped up, little kids and yelling at her, saying she's going to go to hell. And getting back to the dog thing, I'll tell you, fam, if you said that they were going to abort kittens or puppies, there would be such a stink. There would be such a stink publicly, people would be out in the street rioting if they heard that they were aborting kittens or puppies. And they call them kittens and puppies. They don't say fetus. Fetus, by the way, just means little one. That's all fetus means. So they call the kittens and puppies, but a human baby they call a fetus. So, like I said, just scrape it out and go on your way. 5:45. Let's see. I got to take some blood pressure medicine pretty soon. I let that lady get upset. Plus, the topic is so telling you. That's all I'm saying. I'm not judging. It hasn't come easy. I mean, the good Lord realizes me as far applicable up. Yeah, thank you. No weapon formed against me will prosper. The idolatry that we had in our house of having Buddha, we had on top of the TV set with a candle burning to that statue. And fam, that's a scam too, because in countries where the people are dirt poor, what they do is they tell the people that they have to burn a candle every day for their prayers to go up before God. That's just a candle that they light every day because they're worried that God is not going to hear their prayers unless they have a candle lit. That's taking the very last penny from some very poor people. To see where it is, because I let that lady really upset me, and then the adrenaline started down. So my blood pressure's high. Ugh. I'm gonna have to take some emergency blood pressure medicine. Thinking about not doing any more live streams is because you want to discuss something like an adult, and then you have somebody who's like, well, and believe me, if you're, yeah, I will. But you have people on college campuses that are supposed to be, areas of discussion and learn. They'll blow whistles and shout the person down. And that's why our society can't come to any agreement on what to do about these problems. And fam, well, my heartbeat is good and my oxygenation is still good. I'm surprised. So I'm very careful about my stats. That's how I've lived so long. And I've been that way since a child. But you have these people and they claim that other people are the fascists, but they don't allow anything to be discussed. And like I said, this video is just a question because it says many people go into lostness and few find the way of salvation. The Lord Jesus Christ preached about hell more than he preached about heaven and a lot of other things. And so you have the Pope telling people there's no hell. You have the Pope telling people there's no personal relationship with Jesus Christ that's available, which is an out and out falsehood. Excuse me. And you have the the Pope. You have the Pope saying that the world needs a one world system, and it needs to have a socialist system. And socialist is one step from communist. So young people, when and if you get your way, Antifa, BLM, and all of you get your way in tearing down this country so that you can start all over again, you have a surprise coming. Because for one thing, you're trying to get a system that you don't vote for. These people that are leading the world, Klaus Schwab and all of them, and his odious right-hand man, who believes that people should eat bugs and worms, which, by the way, is in the Bible. It says we are not to eat insects, that is an abomination. So the Bible knew all about this stuff centuries ago. It said don't eat of the mouse and the pig centuries ago. This is how accurate the Bible is. Don't kid yourself that the Bible isn't scientific, because the Bible talked about social distancing, and the Bible talked about covering your face if you're sick. And it also talked about eating the mouse and the pig. And what that is scientists came up with gene splicing. They spliced the genes of a mouse and a pig together, and they came up with what they call the eco pig, which is supposed to be more eco-friendly. But it hasn't been approved by the FDA as far as raising these things and letting people eat them. But they did create them. So when the Bible said, don't eat of the mouse and the pig, it talked about this stuff centuries before these intelligent scientists, came up with it. I saw a combination online of a dog and a female, a human female that had been cloned. They're called chimeras. And the lady is lying down with her human puppies, breastfeeding along her belly, just like a dog with puppies. And it looks like a woman with dog ears and a muzzle. And see, the moral problem is they create these things in a lab, and then they have to get rid of them. And so what do? They destroy them. They create these things, they let them live for a little while, they fool around with them, mess around with them, then they destroy them. Same thing with CERN. When you take the building blocks of the universe, which are actually quite simple, hydrogen molecules, and you accelerate them and then ram them into each other, and you look at what you formed. Well, CERN is doing a lot of things. Ionosphere up further out into space. That's why the world overall is running out of water, I believe, because when you push the ionosphere up into space, it means that the solar winds, hey Hungry, how you doing? It means that the solar winds can carry that water away into space. That's what happened to Mars when Mars lost its magnetic core, is that the water went into space. The solar winds took away most of the water from Mars. And I'm going to tell you, fam, I'm good, thank you. I'm going to tell you, fam, I have an inkling that when we finally get to Mars, and I believe we will have found that man already occupied Mars eons ago, and that we did to Mars the same thing that we did to this planet, that we destroyed it, and that we had to hop in our rockets and move to another planet. They're already looking at other planets that are habitable in our system, and they're trying to figure out ways to get to them. So none of this stuff is new. None of it's new. And the Bible is very much more accurate than Nostradamus and all of that mess. You know, I let that woman knock me off the topic and everything. But see, when people don't deal in truth, and they don't call an apple, they don't call a man, they don't call a woman anymore, then everything is skewed, and you can't make proper choices about things because you're not dealing in the truth. I'm going to tell you one last thing, and then I got to go, fam. When you have any civilization and the children have been perverted, God has never let any civilization go further than when the children are perverted. When the children are perverted and their childhood innocence is taken away, God says that's it. They have to be cut off. That's just the way it is. God didn't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah only for sexual sin. It says in the word that they ate and they drank sumptuously and made no provision for the poor. And you have people on these mukbang channels like that girl, she's eating enormous amounts of food, and then she says in the camera that she has to hold the food down for 10 minutes in order to qualify for a win. And you can see by her teeth that after she eats this enormous amount of food, that she goes and hey, how you doing? She goes and she throws it up. Because there's no way on earth that you can literally stuff yourself like that without your heart and your lungs and all being compressed. So here you have a third of the world starving now. Used to be a fourth of the world. Now it's a third of the world, including people who are starving in America. I myself got my benefits cut by $294. My rent went up by $200 plus inflation. So a lot of meals for me are beans and rice or oatmeal, and I have to measure everything. If I have coffee, I'll drink 7 ounces of coffee. If I have oatmeal, I have 4 ounces of oatmeal. If I had, like today, I had a potato chopped up with a little bit of bacon bits on it and some butter and onion. That was my main meal for the day. That was it. You know, and I'll have a little snack of something later on, maybe some peanut butter. But there are people all over our country now who are having to decide to skip a meal so their children can eat. Don't kid yourself about that. And our country is going to see more and more of this because we've spit in the face of God, particularly these people that are going to have this Luciferian conference in Boston at the end of the month. Because The end of April is a high time for Satanists. I don't know what the holiday is, don't want to know. But see, in our coexist culture, we're allowing these people to spit in the face of God. So God has got to punish all of us at the moment. It's just like all of us who love on God, all of us who love on God are actually benefiting the people who don't. And these people are very foolish, thin. And you figure these valves, your life is being maintained by these tissue thin valves. Every heartbeat is a miracle, fam. Every heartbeat is a miracle, and don't forget that. But at some point, God says he's going to have to separate the wheat from the tares, the good from the bad, the sheep from the goats. And for those of you, I'm going to say this last thing, then I'm going to have to go take some emergency blood pressure medicine. For those of you that are worshiping Lucifer, Lucifer doesn't exist anymore. Lucifer used to be the angel in the presence of God, like a lampshade before God. He was the one that stood in the very presence of God, looking at God. It says now that the angels in heaven, it says now, yeah, we're the remnant. America's not going to recover from what we're in right now. We're in a spiral. America has suffered what they call DEATH by 1,000 cuts. Too many people have betrayed America, even our current administration. But let me stay on point. The word of God says that the angels cover their eyes with their feathers in humility. With another set of wings, they cover their feet in humility. And with the third set of wings, they fly around constantly saying, holy, 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 all the time. Even Muslims, of course, believe in they're what is called children of a lesser God. They believe in a God of their creation, Allah. And they believe in saying Allahu Akbar all the time. They believe that if somebody doesn't say that and Allah doesn't hear his praises all the time, that he's going to strike the earth with the DEATH blow. And I've studied other religions, in my years. So languages and religions. But in any case, the word says in the latter days there will be great deception. And so my point being is if we think we're saved and we're not, and we miss the boat, you miss what I believe is going to be a pre-tribulation rapture of the church. Jesus left, he's going to come back. Jesus was crucified, and over 500 people saw him afterwards. And I can guarantee you, fam, for those of you that said that Jesus passed out on the cross, was laid in, the Roman soldier took that spear and thrust it into the side of Christ. He thrust it in between the ribs, and he shoved it up into the lungs, and he shoved it up until it tore at the heart of Christ, and blood and water spilled out of the wound. And that's because all of the capillaries are destroyed. Jesus was good and gone by that time. He didn't just poke Jesus in the side and say, okay, Jesus, wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey. No, the Romans were masters at ways to destroy a man. you know, whipping Jesus to where his organs showed through his ribs, spitting on his face, pulling his beard out, jamming a crown of thorns on his head so the blood ran into his eyes, pounding nails through his hands and his feet, putting him up in the hot sun for bugs and birds and everything to come and pick on his wounds. His tongue swelled up in his mouth. He barely got the words out, "Father, it's finished," you know. And he asked for a drink. They gave him cider out of their perverseness. They gambled for his clothes because the Bible said that they would throw dice for his clothes rather than rip his clothes. That came to pass. The Bible said that they would not break his legs. And see, they broke the legs of the other two men because the other two men hadn't passed away. And when you're on a cross, you have to lift yourself up to breathe. You have to push up. That's why they broke the legs of the other men. And the Bible said the Lord won't see corruption. He won't have a broken bone in his body. So that prophecy came true. And the veracity of the word of God is fulfilled prophecy. Everything that we're seeing today was prophesied thousands of years ago. It says before the return of Christ, a great falling away must happen. So fam, I'm sorry to tell you that there's no mention of America in the Bible. Russia is mentioned in the latter days. Iran is mentioned. Gomer, which I believe, I believe Gomer is Germany. And I believe that many countries that say that they are allied with America right now are going to abandon us. You figure France is negotiating with Russia. And we gave France their freedom in WW2. And not only did we give France their freedom, but when American soldiers tried to land in France to help the French soldiers, the Vichy French turned their guns on American servicemen and mowed them down. Brave men that went to France to try and help France, and the French turned around, some of them, and cut those men down. But see, that's not politically correct to mention. My generation remembers, I will never drive a French car. I will never drink French wine. I won't drive a Japanese car either, because Barack Obama went to Japan to apologize on behalf of America. He didn't apologize on my behalf because in WW2, the Japanese took American POWs. They starved them to death. They marched them to death. They put them in vats of ice water to see how long they would live. They beheaded some of them. And some of them they burned to see how long they would live. And the worst thing of all was they took live men and performed vivisection on them. They took live men and they slit them open and cut on them and took parts out of those men while they were alive. Just like a frog in a high school. And so I understand that these countries have their relationships, but it's all pragmatic. Months ago, I urged President Trump to take those 50 nukes out of Turkey and give them to Israel for safekeeping, which of course he never did. And now Turkey, even though it's part of NATO, is in bed with Russia. they're playing both sides of the fence. I believe that in when stuff happens, you're going to see amazing things happen. I believe in the future that the state of Texas is going to secede from the Union and possibly make Donald Trump their president. Texas used to be a country. I believe that when WW3 starts, and the Pope says it's already started, I believe that countries like France will turn on us. I believe that Germany will go back to the New World Order. I believe especially Italy will. All of these countries are going to do what's pragmatic. Countries that America has given billions and trillions of dollars. India has turned its back on America. You know, so the best thing for America at this point would be to pull in our horns. We're not blessed of God anymore. These pastors that tell you that God wants you to have a house and a Cadillac before he comes back, they're liars. This is the one time that I agree with Louis Farrakhan. Louis Farrakhan said that America is living in houses that are sitting on land that we don't own anymore. You know, El Presidente gave the Dragon Country 5 million barrels of U.S. sweet crude, the good stuff, from our petroleum reserves. He just sent that over to China with no explanation. I'm not talking about 5 million gallons. I'm talking about 5 million barrels. So that's 50 or 55 gallons, whatever a barrel is, times 5 million. A horrendous amount of oil that we sent over to the Dragon Country. And his family has gotten millions of dollars from the Dragon Country and others. Fam, we've already been sold out. We have Antifa, we have BLM, we have the American Communist Party. When I was young, fam, nobody would come out and say they were atheist. Nobody would come out and say that they were homosexual. You know, I had an aunt that worked for the government, and she was a lesbian. And I loved her dearly. She loved me. She was a butch lesbian. And she made up a story because she worked for the government in the 30s and 40s. Back then, if you were homosexual, you got let go because they considered you a security risk because of things that homosexuals got into that they could be blackmailed for. That was the whole premise. That's not me saying. I'm just telling you, okay? I loved the lady very much. She was like a second mother to me. But she had to live her life alone, living with her mother. She had to make up a story when people asked her why she never got married. She made up a BS story about a sailor that said he was in love with her and he jilted her and she never got over it. That was her story. So nothing ever was like it seemed. You had the Brady Bunch, which was supposed to be so innocent and pure. And Greg Brady was hitting on Marcia, and he was hitting on his mother. And then you had the father was homosexual. So nothing was true about the Brady Bunch. And that's the way America was back in the day, that people were living a lie because they were afraid to come out. And then you had this couple, the Rosenbergs or something, and they gave the secret of the BOMB to the Russians. And the explanation that they gave was that they wanted to give Russia the BOMB in order to level the playing field. Of course, they got a great deal of money for it. They didn't mention that. But they took that couple out very quickly and executed them. That was in the 1950s. And people don't talk about that. If this were back then, that young man who sold out all of the military information, he would be executed. He wouldn't be put in jail for his lifetime, all that other stuff. He would have been executed. That was the old America. If you did something like that, they took you out and they executed you. But of course, nowadays, you have people do all sorts of hideous stuff. You know, push people into subway trains and stuff like that. Chop people up with the machete. Awful things that they do to people. And then they turn around, they say that they need to be cut a break because they had a bad childhood. Fam, I was electrocuted by my father. I was used as an ashtray. I was sexually, when my sister hit on me, my oldest sister hit on me when I was 17 years old. We had idolatry in my family. We had generational curses of all of this. My father spoke curses over me, saying that I would never be anything. My brother, when he was a little child, he said he was going to be president someday. My father turned to him, he said, "You're never going to be anything." That destroyed my brother. But fam, I still grew up and the good Lord snatched me out of that. I love the Lord. I'm not ashamed to anybody who's saying that I love the Lord Jesus. I'll tell anybody that. And if there's a penalty for doing so, then it has to be paid. I'll tell you one thing that I was told in the spirit. And God doesn't talk to me verbally. I get like knowledge in my spirit and stuff. I was asked the question years ago, Will, if you got sick, would you still love me? And I said, I don't know, Lord. I don't know if that were the case, if I could. The reason being my father, my earthly father, was so foul and dirty and perverted when I was young. Did unspeakable things that I can't even tell you on the internet because of his reputation and the fact that he is born again, blood washed, and he's in the kingdom of God, forgiven. And I have to forgive him. And I have forgiven him. He got born again at 77, and he went from being the most foul, nasty person to being my confidant and my friend and my beloved father. And oh, fam, I wished I'd known. Oh, I wished I'd known back then when he was suffering in the hospital for his last days. And he had DIED in bed. And unfortunately, they revived him. And long story short, he got put on life support. And then my family had to fight over taking him off of life support because it was chewing up all of the money that he had left behind. That's the reason for it. My sister had his pets put to sleep before my father even DIED. My loving, religious sister took his 2 cats to the vet, and instead of having them adopted, see, the cats were going through the house going meow, meow, looking for my father. And it got on my sister's nerves. So she said, she found a vet. She said, well, there's suffering. That's all she told him. Had both healthy young cats put to sleep at the same time. And shame on that vet for doing that. Shame on him. I know who he is and where he is. but shame on him. And see, she was in her mind, she was gearing up for my father not coming back. If my father had lived and he came back home and found out that she had KILLED, his pets, he would have passed away again, I can tell you. But God gave me the grace of being able to pat his hand and say, Buck, I love you. It's all right. You're not going to hurt. It's going to be over soon. I'm going to be right behind you. I love you. I care about you. God cares about you. I would have never been able to say that without the grace of God. And then, eat a Cheeto and pop open a can of Coke, call the family and tell them, well, you're through the window, grabbed him up and blew right through me. That was the experience that I had when he passed. My family never said, Will, we're sorry for you. Thank you for being with him. They didn't allow me to be with my mother when she passed. I sent my mother the most expensive color TV for her bedroom for her last days, for her enjoyment. Sent her a $468 portable color TV, top of the line Zenith. And when my mother passed, my father didn't like that I had given it to her. So he sold it to the sister who tried to stab me. He sold it to her for $50. I went over to her house and saw the TV, and she said, look, Will, Daddy sold me this color TV for $50. I never told her that I was still making the payments of $468 on a TV that Buck had given to her for $50. I had class back then. And believe me, it hurt. It hurt that a sister who wanted to stab me over my mother giving me $20 would brag about the $50 TV and that Buck had given it to her. Nobody said thank you, kiss my ass, go to hell to me. I had another sister, because I had a bunch of sisters, who was suffering in her house in Tacoma Park. And they had gotten a fortune from their in-laws, and they literally gambled their house away, wound up in this little bungalow. I went to the same company. I told Mr. Stone, I said, give me the biggest, coldest air conditioner that'll run on 115 volt house current, that takes a regular plug. And he put this enormous air conditioner in the back of my Toronado. I drove up to Tacoma Park. I drove up into the driveway, scraped the bottom out of the car, rubbed the doors of the car against the stone wall of the driveway, trying to get up to where I could get the air conditioner far enough up to where I could get it into the house. Nobody helped me carry it in. I carried it in. She plugged it up, said that it was a blessing from God, which it was, and eventually things took a turn for the worse for me. I tried to start a company, wound up homeless. That very same sister who had a house and empty rooms, she told me, she said, well, I don't do men, I'm sorry. So, fam, when you talk about hurt and pain, and somebody uses that as an excuse to go into a school or a shopping center and cap a whole bunch of innocent people, that doesn't cut it with me. And I'll tell you one more thing. I owned a rifle when I was 11 years old. Back in my day and age, getting a knife or a rifle from a parent or in my case, it was my grandfather, who my father hated, but he loved me dearly. And he gave me a rifle as an 11-year-old boy, and I was responsible with it. But my father used to clean that rifle, pointing it up into my room. And I would literally be in my room against the wall, being very quiet, hoping that my father didn't make that rifle go off by accident and cap me after everything that he had done to me. But fam, these people that say they've had a bad life and that gives them carte blanche to hurt other people, no, I'm sorry. And I always thought outside the box. As a young child, I had a Social Security card, which you didn't have to have back then. I had a bank account at 9 years old. I had money in my pocket. When things got bad at home, I would just bounce. When I was 6, I ran away and my parents had the cops bring me back. After that, when I would leave home, they would just let me go. I would go downtown and eat like a king with these $2.99 Marriott Hot Shop coupons that my father had from work. Eat like a king. Didn't realize that I had endocrine problems back then. And they had something called a Mighty Mo and a orange freeze, which was orange, sugar, and a cherry. And I would literally get high from drinking the orange freeze. Would make me high as a kite when my sugar would get out of hand. But see, I didn't know any better back then. I was on my own. 8 years old kid, I could cook. I could sew my own clothes, the holes in my socks. You know, paid for my own food and meals and stuff when things got too crazy around the house. You know, rescued my father. I could drive a car when I was a kid because of my one sister. My father went to a farmer's market in Delaware. Thank God we were out of state. He had bought this very expensive sports car in 1967. Cost $7,400, a Rambler Ambassador Diplomat. 2 4-barrel carburetors, V8, knockoff wire wheels, fog lamps. Sexiest car I've ever seen in my life. And we go to this farmer's, and I used to be able to drive the car up into the driveway and wash it under penalty of death from my father. But I still wanted to drive that car. He called it Princess. And Princess hated me, I can tell you. I was washing Princess one day and the bumper almost cut my fingers off because car manufacture back then wasn't very good and the bumpers were all raw metal in the back. But my father went up to this girl at the farmer's market. She was bent over looking at vegetables. And not only did he slap her on the butt, but he rubbed her butt. She turned around and she said, "What the living hell is wrong with you?" You know what my father said? He said, "I'm sorry, I thought you were my daughter." Now, we didn't come to the beach with his daughter. It was Buck and I had come to the beach in the sports car. And it was hot as hell that day. And I said to myself, Buck, we got to get out of here. That lady is going to call the cops. You're going to wind up in jail. I went out to Princess. I felt all around in the ashtray over the visor. I got the keys, started the car up, put the electric seat forward, hit the air conditioning, pulled up, and I told Buck, I said, get in. We need to get out of here before the cops come. And then I pulled over, he drove, and we were out of there. And man, when I crossed that Bay Bridge back into Maryland, I was like, thank God. Because later the prison became a customer of mine for the trash company. And I had a Datsun 280ZX. And back then, imported cars were very unpopular because people said it was stealing American jobs. And when the warden saw my Datsun, it said Nissan on the left and it said Datsun 280Z on the right. Very unusual. They had two car company names on it. The warden said he didn't like the car and he might find something in the car that would force them to jail me. And he wasn't kidding. And so I got in that car and I got the heck out of there. When they opened up those prison gates and I went out of that prison with that Datsun up the highway, I was never so happy. I was never so happy. And when I worked for Chrysler and Chrysler was going under, I got a car at my dealership. It was red on red on red, blood red. And on the left, they had badged it as a Dodge Diplomat. And on the right, it was a Plymouth Grand Fury. Never forget that car. It sat in front of my cubicle for weeks and weeks and weeks. And it was blood red on red on red. So I got tired of looking at it. I took it down to the shop. And I told them I want gold stripes put on the car. I want the sexy turbine hubcaps put on the car. Boss came in. He said, "Oh, you sold the Grand New Yorker Diplomat Grand Fury." I said, "No, it's in the shop." He said, "What's wrong with it?" I said, "I'm having it pinstriped and I'm having the turbine hubcaps." What? $138 back then. You would have thought that I had robbed a bank. So I get the car back up on the showroom floor. It looks sexy and gorgeous. And I sold it to two old ladies, two old spinsters. And I saw that car for years driving through Silver Spring with the turbine hubcaps and the gold Starsky and Hutch striping that I'd had put on it. And the two old ladies driving along at 28 miles an hour with the left blinker. And I got to tell you, fam, Chrysler was a wonderful company to work for. I never had to cheat anybody. If you had good sales, you got steak, potato, salad, coffee, drink, and dessert at a function. If you had crappy sales, you got beanie weenies or you got macaroni and cheese was what you got. Bobo Renfro, the football player, was one of our salespeople. Lovely gentleman. He was just like the guy out of that Kurt Russell movie, Used Cars. And he would open up the door and he'd say, "You're going to like this car. You're going to like it. Get in the car. You're going to like this car." That was his sales pitch. Wonderful, funny guy. We would go to a football game or basketball game, and you would take a handful of Chrysler business cards. When somebody would score, you jump up and yell "yay" and throw your business cards all up in the air. They would flutter down, and then you would get a call from somebody who wanted to buy a car, and then you would get a call from somebody else. "You stinking so-and-so throwing those business cards." It took me 2 hours to clean those cards up from between the stadium seats. And if you ever come back, "You stinking so-and-so, rotten beast, son of a," that would be the other phone call that you would get. But we had fun selling cars. And the only problem was assuring somebody that they got a good deal. And believe me, fam, I gave people a good deal, had lots of fun, didn't make very much money, but I always drove a new car and met a lot of nice people. I still love Chrysler automobiles. I don't know what it is about a Chrysler. The quality wasn't great back then, but if you wanted a car that you could drive forever, you bought a Chrysler. Well, anyway, fam, I got to go take my emergency blood pressure medicine. You know, it's a shame that another person spoiled the video because, like I said, I wasn't trolling. I was just asking a question. And the topic was, how do you know if you're really saved, if you're really born again? But the devil sent that one lady, Helen Smith, to throw a wrench in everything. So, Helen Smith, when I get off of here, I'm going to check out your channel and see what you're, because I already know the deal that I'm going to go to your channel and it's going to say that you've been a YouTube member forever and you have no videos or very few videos, pretty much no or very little creativity. You just got your handle so that you could hop online and criticize other people, Helen Smith. So I hope that karma catches up with you. I hope you get the reward from the seeds, the bad seeds that you've sown. I forgive you. Yeah, I'm not going to let you worry me 1 minute more after I turn this camera off. But you did a foul thing. You hopped in there to try and ruin my video and take everything off course. And one thing I'll say to you, if you're a devil's advocate, you do the devil's work, but someday you're going to get the devil's paycheck. So I hope you take that to heart. And next time, mind your manners before you hop on somebody else's channel. I love you. The good Lord loves you more, fam. Poppity Pops out.